welcome back to my channel for this March wrap-up. In this video, I'll be updating my reading journal. If you missed the setup of this journal, I will leave a link in the top right corner. The first book I read was Race by Toni Morrison. At 52, Mason Dead was as imposing a man as he had been at 42, when milkmen thought he was the biggest thing in the world, bigger even than the house they lived in. But today he'd seen a woman who was just as tall and who made him feel tall too. That is the opening of Race, and is from Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon. Race is a collection of excerpts from Song of Solomon, The Bluest Eye, and Beloved, the short story Recitative, and the essay Making America White Again. In this collection, Toni Morrison unpacks race through stories of friendship, discrimination, romance, dehumanization, and confusion. The essay Making America White Again is ever so relevant and a must-read today. I got a glimpse of Toni Morrison's lyrical and poetic writing, and I honestly can't wait for the next one. Beloved is definitely high up on my to-read next list. The only reason why I only gave this 3 stars is because I think I don't really like the miniseries. I think I'd much rather get the full versions, and so this was just a note to myself not to buy a mini book again. I went for a very minimal scrapbooking look here, with just some black paper and some craft paper. I always like to use at least one quote that stood out for me. I always excessively annotate my books, and I love going back to my favorite passages and quotes and then include one in my journal. In one of the excerpts, the author also recommends a few authors and their work, so I wanted to include that in this spread too. If you could go back in time, who would you want to meet? That is the opening question of Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Beautifully and simply written, Before the Coffee Gets Cold takes you on people's journeys of regret, reconciliation, and closure. Set in a small cafe in Tokyo, we meet 4 visitors to the coffee shop that has a very special item on the menu: the opportunity to travel back in time. With some truly touching and heartwarming passages, this book made me smile and cry as I learned about the character stories. These moving stories reflect on the question, if you could go back in time, would you change anything? And who would you want to meet if you had one more chance? I gave it 4.5 stars because it was everything I was hoping for and more. I do want to say that I did not start off loving this book. The first part is not that intriguing and feels a little shallow and unemotional, but then the next part had me absolutely in tears and was so heartwarming that I ended up just speed reading through the next parts as well. Coffee really is the central theme to this book, so I thought I would intentionally spill some coffee and make that the background of my journal spread. I wasn't so confident to do this directly onto my notebook, so I used some spare papers from an old bullet journal and pasted them here. I also used that opportunity to put some craft paper behind it to make the spread look a little more warm. Normal People by Rooney. Marianne answers the door when Connor rings the bell. She's still wearing her school uniform, but she's taken off the sweater, so it's just a blouse and a skirt. She has no shoes on, only tights. "Oh hey," she says. "Come on in." I love the way that Normal People is written. The precision with which Rooney writes makes the moment feel so real and so painful. And I think I like Normal People, but it also left me frustrated and a little sad. I was expecting some easy read high school book, but instead it really hit where it hurts. One of my favorite parts is the quote I wrote down here that says, "Now he's here, standing on his own in a crowded room, not knowing whether to take his jacket off. It feels practically scandalous to be lingering here in solitude. He feels as if everyone around him is disturbed by his presence. This is just one of the examples of how much I love his style of writing and how well Sally Rooney does at describing life at university. For the spread, I completely let myself be inspired by the cover of the edition that I have. I spent months seeing that cover in every single bookstore and eventually got myself a copy. So it's just inherently linked to my brain, and I still vividly remember it always catching my eye. So here's a very simple spread inspired by that cover. The next book I read was Jazz by Toni Morrison. I know that woman. She used to live with a flock of birds on Lenox Avenue. Know her husband too. He fell for an 18-year-old girl with one of those deep down spooky loves that made him so sad and happy, he shot her just to keep the feeling going. So that's how the book opens. Set in 1920s Harlem, the book tells the story of Joe Trace, who shoots dead his lover of 3 months, the 18-year-old Dorcas. Violet, his wife, storms her funeral, showing up with a knife with the intention to cut the already dead girl. Toni Morrison's lyrical and poetic writing guides you through a passionate, tragic, and just wildly profound narrative that will leave you wanting to reread the book as soon as you finish it. And I say that because not only is it so beautifully written, it also just has so many layers that I couldn't possibly get it on the first read. I did find out that you're supposed to read Beloved first, so that's what I will do before I give it a second read. Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. At the time I first realized I might be fictional, my weekdays were spent at a publicly funded institution on the north side of Indianapolis called White River High School, where I were required to eat lunch at a particular time, between 12:37 and 1:14 p.m., by forces so much larger than myself that I couldn't even begin to identify them. Now this is by far my favorite opening line of this month's books. I always include the openings of the book because that's what I love reading in the bookstore to see if the book is going to be for me, if I'm intrigued. So you'll see that as part of most of my spreads. John Green somehow finds a way to describe the way anxiety feels and manifests itself through the story of Asa Holmes. While it is sometimes painful to read, not the least because it brings up some of my least favorite memories, I think it does so well at representing both young adult thoughts as well as anxiety. I wish I could hand a copy to everyone close to me or to anyone with anxiety. If you do have anxiety yourself, I advise to please proceed with caution if you intend to read this book, to make sure that the triggers in this book are not also yours or not more than you're capable or willing to handle at this point in time. I cut this spread very light in colors with some craft paper and some light purple touches. Anxiety and mental illness are often portrayed as a spiral in this book, which is why I included those details. So this was the last spread of this month. If you want to make sure you don't miss the next wrap up, make sure to subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the video and have a nice day.